Salvador Dali is the showman of 20th century art. He was born with a very mischievous sense of humour. He's really honed our understanding of the absurd, showing us that anything's possible. And he brought to life extraordinary dream worlds in his vivid surrealist paintings. We all know what surrealism means. It's something that conjures a sense of the bizarre and the unexpected, or the irrational. But the fact that we do is entirely thanks to Dali, who brought surrealism into the mainstream.
But with his eccentric appearance and absurd antics, many just dismiss him as a clown, a celebrity-hungry self-publicist. So was the art he created really that important? And has it changed the world we live in?
If you mention Dali's name today, most people think of, well, they think of a big moustache and melting clocks. And I reckon that the persistence of memory is Dali's most popular painting. This is reproduced and parodied everywhere.
The actual painting is in New York, at the Museum of Modern Art. So that's where I'm heading first. And here it is.
Now, don't be fooled by its size. This is 10 by 14 inches of Dali dynamite, exploding with ideas about time, dreams, and our most intimate fantasies and fears. Nearly 80 years after it was painted, there's something that still haunts us about this picture. It has the strange, airless quality of a dream, but one that's quite unsettling, that you never forget. It's as if Dali has taken our intangible anxieties about time passing and mortality and crystallized them in paint.
What is it that makes it so compelling? Perhaps it's because Dali paints impossible worlds in a very realistic way. They feel real, and in a sense, they are. Dali's childhood paintings of Cadaqués show his incredible natural talent. He made this one when he was just 15.
You know, he could draw from the day he was born. He just had it in the blood. I suppose that's why he thought very early on he was a genius.
It's hard to believe from his gentle, sun-drenched teenage paintings that Dali actually had a troubled, anxious childhood.
This is the church.
It was only in later years that these anxieties would be reflected in his work.
There's a darker side to Dali which starts to emerge here as well, right?
Absolutely, there is a darker side. And those empty beaches with hardly anybody there, or distant figures, always alone. And I think he was terribly lonely and anxious and very, very timid. And then there's the anxiety about his mother. He is very close to his mother, but his mother is not very well, and eventually she dies when he's still very young. And that's a terrible loss. Then he's left alone. He has to face his father, and his father is a very violent figure. And Dali is frightened of his father. He admires him, he'd like to be like him, but he's frightened of him.
When he was 18, Dali moved to Madrid to study fine art. Here, he began to overcome his extreme shyness by developing a new, eccentric persona. He began to wear dandyish outfits and grew what would eventually become his famous moustache. His student art displayed outstanding technical ability, and Dali certainly knew it. His shyness was transformed into unbridled self-belief. He was actually expelled for making the outrageous statement that none of his teachers was good enough to examine his work. Going to Madrid was the first step in the young Salvador becoming Dali. Dali was in his early 20s when he first heard about the group of experimental artists in Paris who were creating strange, fantastical work. So strange, in fact, that a new word had to be invented to describe their art: surreal. Discovering surrealism would change Dali's life. The persistence of memory was unveiled in New York in 1932. It was originally bought for just $250, but the reaction to it and to Dali was immense. His moustache grew ever longer, and his behaviour became ever more eccentric. Like a circus showman, he constantly engineered weird stunts that would attract headlines. One of many was his 12-metre-long loaf of bread. Many felt that Dali was undermining his reputation. They were dismayed that the man who'd created such groundbreaking and influential work was descending into buffoonery. But Dali's antics popularised surrealism, taking it far beyond the elite world of fine art.
Dali even designed the logo for this incredibly familiar lollipop. Now, I had loads of these when I was a kid, and what I never actually knew was that all the time I was licking a surrealist work of art.
Despite the stunts and commercial ventures, Dali's post-war career did deliver some of his most popular paintings. A new fascination with religion informed pictures like The Temptation of St. Anthony. The crucifixion inspired him too. In 1951, he painted Christ of St. John on the cross. Its bold perspective, apparently inspired by a dream, reveals the coast of Cadaqués beneath a hovering cross. And with the onset of the Cold War and the nuclear age, another big theme caught his imagination.
Everything jumping and romping in a completely extraordinary eurythmic feeling.
And all your life will be to the rhythm of atomic explosion.
Exactly, one new kind of atomic and nuclear mysticism.
In the 60s and 70s, Dali split his time between his home in Spain, Paris and New York, performing that famous caricature version of himself and continuing to court publicity and controversy. Dali died in January 1989. He was buried at the centre of the museum, which is now his mausoleum.
Well, just look, Dali left an indelible mark. Everything from cinema to painting, to jewellery and fashion, to design and advertising, even comedy. There isn't much that Dali hasn't changed. As he said himself, "When I paint, the sea roars. The others just splash about in the bath."
What does that mean?
That boy needs therapy.